In an instant, a black shadow streaked by like lightning past those 100 undead, and then those 100 undead turned into bare skeletons, leaving only their soul flames floating in the air. At the same time, I suddenly received a system alert that my undead summons had been killed. After wiping out all the undead, that black figure appeared before the undead king. As one of the undead, I can't kill you for good, but reviving an epic summon takes at least a month, doesn't it? So, goodbye. A flash of steel cut through the air, and the undead king's head was severed. Then the undead king too turned into a pile of dry bones and collapsed to the ground. Your summon, the undead king, is on the verge of death. Looking at the system notification, I felt a real sense of danger for the first time. In just 5 seconds, it wiped out the undead king and the entire undead legion. Even Boogie's at full power, with the skeleton king in reserve, couldn't possibly, in such a short time, kill over 100 undead monsters. From that alone, I could tell the attacker was something truly terrifying. Of course, I still had to recall the undead king, but there was no way I was going in unprepared. So I decided to get 2 more epic summons to protect myself. Then, an ordinary-looking, completely unremarkable wolf appeared before me. It was the normal wild wolf I'd bought from the shop earlier. Summon, wild wolf. Normal, evolvable. Race, wolf. Tier 1, level 1. Talent, fierce bite, earth rank. After checking its stats, I didn't hesitate at all and dumped evolution points into it like crazy. Then one system prompt after another rang out. 1,000 evolution points consumed. Evolved into giant wolf. 30,000 evolution points consumed. Evolved into giant wolf king. At that point, I suddenly saw several evolution paths after the giant wolf king. The cheapest one only needed a mere 100,000 evolution points. It was called the Swift Wolf. Then there were 3 more. The Frost Wolf King for 200,000, the Storm Wolf King for 300,000, and the Wolf Lord for 500,000. Naturally, there was no way I'd pick a low-tier evolution. This 500,000 point Wolf Lord was also the most expensive, epic evolution I'd ever seen. I looked at my evolution points and decided to splurge for once. Damn it, evolution points are meant to be spent. Why hold back? As the 500,000 points were consumed, a beam of light descended from the sky. Giant Wolf King's super evolution complete? Wolf Lord acquired the talent Wolf God's Might SS rank? All other talents disappeared. It was the first time I'd ever seen an SS rank talent. I was stunned. Even though the other talents were gone, spending 500,000 was still absolutely worth it. Because in all the information available so far, the highest talent rank anyone had seen was only S. My heart pounding, I checked the Wolf Lord stats again with trembling hands. Summon, Wolf Lord. Epic, evolvable. Race, Wolf God, race. Tier 1, level 1, talent, Wolf God's Might, SS rank. Looking at those terrifying stats, I sucked in a cold breath. Because with stats like these, even the level 10 Skeleton King couldn't compare. That was the gap between a 300,000 point evolution and a 500,000 point one. You really do get what you pay for. That SS rank Wolf God's Might imposes absolute suppression on all wolfkind and can kill and devour any wolf-type creature's talents and make them its own. Not only can it suppress them, it can devour talents too. That's way too broken. But what I didn't expect was that the Wolf Lord's appearance would amaze me even more. Its white fur looked threaded with platinum, and those eyes one blue, one red made its uniqueness obvious. It looked incredibly cool. I vaulted straight onto the Wolf Lord's back. Right then, I was the coolest guy on the street. Sitting atop the Wolf Lord, I swept my gaze around and opened the system panel in satisfaction. I now had 3 epic summons, the Skeleton King, the Undead King, and the newly evolved Wolf Lord. As for Elite rank summons, I only had the Wraith plus that normal rank Mist Eagle. Forget it. No point looking anymore. If I didn't do something soon, the Undead King really would turn into a pile of bones. If the Undead King could talk, it would have been cursing me out by now. Soon, thanks to the Wolf Lord's speed, I drew close to where it was. To be safe, I decided to send my normal rank Mist Eagle to scout the area first. The eagle immediately took to the sky and circled the surroundings once before sending the situation back to me. Fortunately, aside from a few mutant beasts, there was nothing else around. So, the first rode the Wolf Lord up to a skull lying on the ground. It was the Undead King, already on the verge of death. Looking at how miserable it was, I was angry, but there was nothing I could do. After all, anyone who could one-shot the Undead King had to be overwhelmingly stronger than us. I recalled the Undead King and let it recover properly. In a situation like this, all I could do was hide in a shelter and lie low for now. Meanwhile, after hearing the news, the city lord Feng Tiancheng rushed back. Though he was heartbroken, what had happened could not be undone. His task now was to gather all the remaining awakened in Tianqing City and wipe out the mutant beasts still rampaging inside the city. A few days later, with Tianqing City finally rid of its last mutant beast, all the citizens hiding in the shelters finally returned beneath the long-lost blue sky. Since reconstruction would take time, everyone was assigned to other cities. As for me, I was sent to Qingyan City. Once everything had been settled, I planned to immediately complete my first-class advancement trial. That thing had been annoying me for ages. If I didn't complete my first advancement, my level couldn't rise. At this point, I already had almost enough EXP to get all my summons to level 20, so the next day, I headed to the Summoners Association in Qingyan City. The association handled all kinds of trials and consultations for the awakened. After the staff explained it, I finally understood how to pass the first advancement trial and obtain my first talent. It was simple: clear a team dungeon once, and after killing the final boss, the advancement would be complete. But clearing a team dungeon wasn't actually all that easy. There was another problem. A team dungeon required at least 2 people to enter. My original plan was to clear the team dungeon by myself. Why did it have to be this annoying? After that, I found a level 10 team dungeon out in the wild near Qingyan City. But to my surprise, when I asked several teams, they were friendly at first. But the moment they heard I was just an ordinary summoner, they rejected me on the spot. As if being a summoner was some kind of problem. Just then, a party came walking out of the dungeon. Among them was a girl who looked a little dazed, as if she were about to cry. Why does a priest like you only know how to heal? Didn't you learn any buff skills? You can't even stay in a safe position. After saying that, the others only glanced at her before going off to find new teammates. They left that dazed girl standing there, desperately holding back her tears. The people around her were so used to it that none of them bothered. But I walked over to her. Since the other teams didn't want me, I'd just make my own party and clear the team dungeon myself. After all, if I pulled out any one of my epic summons, a mere level 10 team dungeon would be a complete slaughter. So what if I brought one more person along? It wouldn't affect anything. Do you want to team up with me? I said to the girl with a smile. The girl lifted her watery eyes to look at me and asked in disbelief, "You really want to team up with me? Aren't you afraid I'll hold you back?" I shook my head. They're just too weak. I'm not like them. When the other awakened around us saw that I had actually gone over to talk to this so-called deadweight, they instantly started mocking me. Another guy, trying to show off and pick up a girl, just wait till that deadweight drags him down so hard he coughs blood. He'll learn his lesson then. That ticked me off immediately. I pulled out a card on the spot and shouted, "There are 20 million blue star coins on this card. Any team here, any one of you, if you can beat the 2 of us, the 20 million on this card is yours." When everyone heard that, their first reaction was that I was bluffing, but the moment they heard 20 million, every eye there filled with greed. The 3-man team that had just ditched the girl suddenly walked over. With arrogant looks, they said to me, "Are you serious? Don't go crying later after we beat your teeth out, claiming there isn't 20 million on that card. If that happens, you'll just be a joke. Why don't you try and find out, clown?" My deliberately infuriating answer completely enraged the warrior. If the other 2 beside him hadn't stopped him, that big guy might have already swung at me. Seeing that the other 2 in the party couldn't take it anymore either. "Fine, we'll fight you." I just smiled and agreed. The girl tried to talk me out of it, but I cut her off at once. "Relax. You don't need to help. I can deal with all 3 of them by myself." Before long, once both sides had settled the rules, the match officially began. Then a wolf that looked utterly ordinary appeared by my side. The moment people saw the wolf I summoned, a wave of jeers spread through the crowd. A wolf that ordinary dares challenge a 3-man squad like that? Has that guy lost his mind? When the 3-man party saw that I'd only summoned one ordinary wolf, they laughed so hard they practically lost it. A summon this ordinary dares to take on all 3 of us by itself? Looks like this kid really did come to hand us money. Then we'll gladly take it. Let's have some fun with this. After saying that, the 3 of them charged straight at me. Their movements were swift, without a trace of hesitation. I, on the other hand, looked completely unconcerned. I waved toward the 3 of them. "Don't kill them, leave them breathing." After that, I made no further move. I almost felt like pulling out a deck chair and lying down in the sun. Before anyone could even react, that seemingly ordinary wolf, moving at a shocking speed, suddenly appeared right in front of the 3 of them. Then they heard 3 loud bangs, and all 3 were sent flying and crashed to the ground. Their equipment scattered all over the place. I slowly walked over. Seeing that all 3 of them had already lost the ability to move, I didn't spare them another glance and looked around again instead. But this time, everyone's faces were filled with shock and confusion. Some of them even looked at me with a hint of fear. That was an instant kill. How is that possible? Fine, the mage and the assassin didn't have much defense in the first place. But even the warrior in full plate armor got taken down instantly. Seeing that no one said another word, I curled my lip. Any other challengers? If not, I'm leaving. Then I turned to go. I'd already shown off enough, and since no one else was giving me another chance, there was no reason to stay. But then a voice stopped me. I'll fight you one-on-one. Then, from within the crowd, a young man in white, holding an ordinary-looking longsword, slowly stepped forward. I turned to look at the young man in white, only to feel a razor-sharp sword intent. It felt suffocating, like the stillness before a raging storm. The moment I sensed the aura, I quickly summoned the wraith and had it possess me. In an instant, the suffocating feeling vanished. The young man in white glanced at me and seemed a little surprised that I had shown no reaction to his sword intent. But he still looked at me with the same expressionless face. The people around us took one look at his outfit and at that faint yet suffocating aura coming from him, and instantly recognized who he was. It's Ling Chun, the Heaven's Lair. That single shout instantly drew everyone's eyes to him. And once they realized it really was Ling Chun, the whole place erupted. As the top scorer in the Awakened exam trial, Ling Chun was, without question, the person everyone in Qingyan City admired. He was also the role model for every newly awakened fighter in the city. But Ling Chun almost never appeared in public, so seeing him was incredibly difficult. Who would have thought they'd actually run into him here? How could they not be excited? Some people wanted to go up and talk to Ling Chun, but after nothing more than a single glance from him, they didn't dare say another word. Then Ling Chun turned his gaze to me and asked flatly, "What are the rules?" I looked Ling Chun up and down, thinking about something. The name Ling Chun seemed vaguely familiar. After thinking for a moment, I finally remembered. Back then, I think I accidentally snatched first place in the trial from that guy named Ling Chun, and the staff member had even called me over because of it. Oh, right. Now I remember. You're Ling Chun, the top scorer in the Awakened exam trial, aren't you? And you also have some title like Heaven's Lair, right? Ling Chun shook his head, still speaking in the same calm tone. None of that matters. When do we start? But I shook my head. There was no way I was going to fight Ling Chun. If I really let the Wolf Lord fight him, there would be no benefit whether I won or lost. There were too many people watching, and Ling Chun's reputation was just too great. Besides not wanting to expose the fact that I had epic summons, there was an even more important reason. I had already realized that in this world, other than mutant beasts, humans could be dangerous too. Qingyan City was a living example of that. So before I had enough confidence to ensure my own safety, I would avoid revealing anything too eye-catching about myself. If some unknown existence set its sights on me, I'd be finished. And because I was worried the Wolf Lord would attract too much attention, I had even made it learn a disguise skill so it could pretend to be an ordinary wolf. So there was absolutely no way I was going to fight Ling Chun. The risk of exposure was too high. But Ling Chun seemed unwilling to let it go. He insisted on fighting me no matter what. Just as I was about to recall the Wolf Lord, Ling Chun suddenly drew his sword and rushed straight at it. Then he hacked at the Wolf Lord again and again. It was obvious he was trying to force me to make a move. But there was no way I was falling for that. Even while ordering the Wolf Lord not to fight back, I could see that with every step, it was barely dodging Ling Chun's attacks. Ling Chun's sword swings looked slow, but in reality they reached their target in the blink of an eye. If the Wolf Lord's stats hadn't been so high, that blade would have landed cleanly. Finally, after one round of attacks, during a brief pause, I managed to recall the Wolf Lord, but it had still taken one hit. And that single hit left me completely dumbfounded, because it had directly shaved off 5% of the Wolf Lord's HP. And the Wolf Lord, which had already reached level 10, had a full 40,000 HP. That meant Ling Chun's one strike had dealt 2,000 damage to the Wolf Lord in a single blow. I was utterly stunned. I had never imagined that Ling Chun could be this strong. So, this is the heavens. I sucked in a sharp breath. He really was a monster among monsters, the top scorer in the Awakened exam trial. No wonder Gingwu University offered him guaranteed admission on the spot. With strength like that, even a cheater like me thought he was absurd. I only gave Ling Chun one last look and said nothing more. Then I left with the girl. Ling Chun didn't chase after us, because he understood that even after pushing me that hard, I still didn't make a move, which obviously meant that no matter what he tried, I wasn't going to act. So he naturally stopped wasting his time. Besides, he had important business to handle this time. Then, under the crowd's astonished gaze, he casually picked someone who hadn't entered a team dungeon today and went into the team dungeon. Although everyone thought a team dungeon couldn't possibly be cleared solo. If the person was Ling Chun, then maybe nothing was impossible. After walking with the girl for a while, I thought it over and said to her, Ling Chun wouldn't come here for no reason. He was obviously here for the team dungeon, so we probably don't have a chance today. The girl nodded blankly. In that case, let's set a time. I'll take you through the team dungeon tomorrow. You don't have any attempts left today anyway? How about it? Okay. I'll go with whatever you say. After seeing my strength, the girl had completely believed that I could carry her through the team dungeon. Even so, she still didn't know why I wanted to help her. Could it be that he likes me? The girl turned her gaze to my face. My eyes shone dazzlingly like the stars, and a faint smile rested on my clean-cut face. When I saw her staring at me, I asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" The girl hurriedly waved her hands. "No, no." I smiled, then suddenly thought of something and said, "We've known each other this long, and I still don't know your name." "I'm Yunye, what about you?" The girl stammered, "Song Won." "Oh, so your name is Song Won. Then I'll see you tomorrow, Song Won." I waved to her and left without looking back. I had originally planned to clear it today, but since I'd already made plans with her, I naturally couldn't go back on my word. I'd already waited this long anyway, so one more day didn't matter. But I didn't want to just sit around doing nothing, so I headed toward the grinding area. Then it suddenly occurred to me that my Wolflord still hadn't gained any additional talents. That just wouldn't do. So I planned to go to the leveling zone and find some wolves so the Wolflord could devour their talents. Its stats were strong, sure, but talents were just as important. I kept thinking about what kind of talents I should find for the Wolflord, but after mulling it over for a long time, I ultimately gave up on the idea. Whatever talents it got, it'd use. Why overthink it? But what I found really regrettable was that in those grinding zones, there wasn't even a single wolf-related race. They were all other monsters. I was completely speechless. It felt like the world was targeting me. Damn it. In the end, since I really couldn't find any, I had no choice but to leave. There was nothing else I could do. If I couldn't find any, who could I blame? After resting at home for the night, early the next morning, I appeared at the entrance to the team dungeon. Not long after, Songwon came hurrying over. Panting heavily, she asked, "So, I'm not late, right?" I checked the time and shook my head. Perfect timing. Just as Sungwon and I were about to step into the team dungeon, a long sword blocked our way. Without my permission today, no one is stepping into this team dungeon. Looking around and seeing that, besides Sungwon and me, there was no one else here, it was obvious to me that Ling Chun was targeting me, and the reason had to be that yesterday, he didn't get to finish that duel with my summon. Looking at how determined Ling Chun seemed, I had a feeling that refusing to fight wasn't going to work this time. But if I ended up exposing myself, I began thinking of a way around it. At that moment, Ling Chun suddenly spoke. In a calm voice, he said, "It looks like you can fight me, but you're worried about something. You can tell me? I can help you solve it. But on one condition, you have to fight me with everything you've got." Hearing that, I fell silent. I stared at the sword in Ling Chun's hand, thinking about something. Then, I glanced at the team dungeon entrance and said, "I have a few conditions. As long as you agree to them, I'll fight you." The moment I said that, Ling Chun's eyes lit up. He stared straight at me, as if as long as I agreed to fight him, he'd go through fire and water without hesitation. I told Sungwon to wait a moment, then pulled Ling Chun aside and said in a low voice, "First, whether you lose or win, you cannot tell anyone anything about me." Ling Chun nodded. Only then did I continue. "Second, you don't get to challenge me anytime you want. You have to put something on the table first. Otherwise, why should I fight you?" Ling Chun thought for a moment, then took a card out of his spatial pack. After that, he said to me, "There's 100 million blue star coins in here. It's everything I've received in funding since awakening. Is that enough to qualify for a fight with you?" Looking at the black gold card in Ling Chun's hand, I was dumbfounded. Then I cursed inwardly. What the hell? I only got 5 million in total, and you're telling me you started off with 100 million? And that isn't even counting the conditions Jingwu University offered him. Damn it, comparing people really is infuriating. I was still thinking about that funding, when Ling Chun suddenly said, "If I fight you, is 50 million for one match enough?" Hearing that, I was completely stunned. "What did you say? You're paying 50 million just to fight me once?" Ling Chun frowned slightly, his voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. "Is that not enough? Enough? Of course it is. So, you're only planning to fight once?" Ling Chun shook his head and said, "I want to fight you twice. If I don't win this time, then that 50 million will count as advance payment for the next fight. If I do win, then that 50 million will be your medical expenses." Listening to Ling Chun say all that so calmly, it didn't sound like he was talking about tens of millions at all. It sounded more like he was talking about pocket change. For the first time, I had a crystal clear understanding of what a perfect sucker looked like. Wasn't Ling Chun exactly that? Fine, I agree to fight you. Even though I still didn't want to expose myself, he'd already shown this much sincerity. At that point, refusing really wasn't an option. Of course, to reduce the risk of exposure, I added, "Wait a second. You have to enter the team dungeon with us? We'll fight in there, so nothing gets exposed?" Ling Chun didn't say much. He simply nodded. Seeing that I had finally finished talking, Songwon hurried over. How did it go between you two? I nodded. It's all settled. Once we go in, it'll be fine. He won't stop us. Songwon glanced at Ling Chun beside us and couldn't help sighing inwardly. Yunye was seriously amazing. He had even managed to deal with a monster like Ling Chun with just a few words. Come on, don't just stand there. Let's get inside. Songwon nodded blankly, then followed me into the team dungeon. Then she saw Ling Chun walk in behind us with his sword, and her mind instantly went blank. Hadn't Yunye already settled things with him? Then, inside a cave, a pale blue portal suddenly opened. I saw Manhwa, and Ling Chun walked out of it, one after another. The first thing Songwon did was run over to me and shout anxiously. Ling Chun came in too. Yunye, think of something. I stared at Songwon as she clutched my hand tightly, then glanced over at Ling Chun, who had turned his head away. Only then did I realize Songwon had misunderstood something, so I quickly explained. I asked him to come in with us. Don't worry about it. Hearing that, Songwon's brain short-circuited on the spot. Ling Chun came in because Yunye I asked him to. Wouldn't that mean a big shot like Ling Chun was going to fight monsters with us and clear the dungeon too? Just how powerful was Yunye if he could even make the Heaven Slayer, Ling Chun, clear a team dungeon with them? After thinking it through, Songwon looked at me as if she were looking at a god. She was full of reverence. Yunye, from now on, if you tell me to go east, I absolutely won't go west. If you tell me to go south, I absolutely won't go north. Songwon said with a determined gaze. I gave a dry chuckle. I honestly couldn't understand what Songwon was on about. Hey, whatever makes you happy. Songwon nodded firmly. Then I said to Ling Chun, do I fight you first, or do we clear the dungeon first and fight afterward? Ling Chun thought about it for a moment, then said, I've already gained my first talent. Your summon is strong, but you're still one talent behind me. If I fought you now, it would be a bit unfair. We can wait until after you clear the dungeon and complete your first advancement, then we'll fight. I nodded and said nothing more. Then, with a casual wave of my hand, a portal suddenly appeared. The Wolf Lord stepped out of it. The reason I didn't summon the Skeleton King and chose the Wolf Lord instead was because the moment I saw all those wolves along the path to clearing the dungeon, my eyes practically lit up. After searching high and low, I had finally found them. I stared at those wolf-type monsters with sparkling eyes, instantly feeling like I no longer had to worry about the Wolf Lord's talents. But what I didn't expect was that Ling Chun would actually start explaining from the side. This team dungeon is called Wolf's Lair. It's a level 10 team dungeon. The difficulty isn't that high. What you need to watch out for are the various mechanisms and traps in the cave. I might have been listening, but the Wolf Lord couldn't care less. With just a few pounces, it had already reached the wolf pack. After only a few attacks, it knocked them all to the ground. They couldn't resist at all. Then, beside my ear, the system prompt immediately rang out. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has killed an LV-12 cave giant wolf and gained 127.8 EXP bonus for killing above its level. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has killed an LV-11 cave giant wolf and gained 147.7 EXP bonus for killing above its level. Besides the usual system prompts, I also saw faint star-like particles rising from the wolves' corpses. They all surged toward the Wolf Lord. Then I received even more prompts. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has acquired the talent hunting C rank. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has acquired the talent Bloodlust, C rank. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has acquired the talent Stealth, D rank. Seeing the Wolf Lord gain 3 talents in an instant, even though none of them were high tier, that was only because we hadn't come across high tier talents yet. As the first talents it had ever gained, I was thrilled. By the time I cleared this entire team dungeon, who knew what the Wolf Lord would become? How many talents would it have by then? As for what the Wolf Lord was doing, Songwon couldn't really grasp the significance of it. She just thought it was impressive. But for Ling Chun, who had cleared the dungeon yesterday, when the Wolf Lord killed those monsters, its speed and its execution were exactly like his, clean, decisive, and every strike was a one-shot. Ling Chun thought to himself, yesterday, I only saw that summon dodging my attacks. I didn't expect that not only was it incredibly fast, its attack power would be terrifying too. It seems that back then, when this guy's name appeared above mine, it really wasn't an accident at all. When Ling Chun first discovered he wasn't ranked first, he hadn't cared much about the ranking itself. But he had been very interested in the Yunye, who ranked above him. But after asking around later and learning more about the situation, he came to believe that I had only taken first place by accident. That instantly disappointed him. What he hadn't expected, though, was that I would actually appear here now. And on top of that, I had revealed such strength. That made Ling Chun feel that I had only been hiding my true power back then. Although Ling Chun didn't understand why, he still chose to respect it. At the same time, he was also quietly thinking about how he should deal with the Wolf Lord's attacks. Of course, none of that mattered to me. Right now, all I wanted to do was grind, grind, grind. Whether it was EXP or talents, it felt amazing. Very soon, under the Wolf Lord's brutal steamrolling, the first floor was cleared. If some of the traps hadn't been hidden so well, I could have cleared it even faster. And through all that, killing the Wolf Lord also gained a few more talents. Your Summon Wolf Lord has acquired the talent Rage B rank. Your Summon Wolf Lord has acquired the talent Rend C rank. Your Summon Wolf Lord has acquired the talent Fearless C 1 B rank and 2 C ranks. After doing the math, I figured the first floor had yielded about 6 talents in total: 1 B rank, 4 C ranks, and 1 D rank. It was an extremely rewarding haul. Then, striding forward with shameless swagger, I went up to the second floor with Ling Chun and Songwon. "Yunye, is there anything I can help with?" Songwon asked me. Sure, getting carried while doing nothing felt great, but it still made Songwon feel like a total freeloader. Even though there was also someone standing nearby who was only watching and not fighting, she couldn't compare herself to Ling Chun. Ling Chun was the kind of freak even genius couldn't describe. Seeing that Songwon really didn't have anything to do, and while that wasn't tiring, it was admittedly a little boring. I thought for a moment and told the Wolf Lord to kill a little more slowly. Then, I took 3 bottles of iced drinks out of my spatial pack and handed them to Songwon and Ling Chun. Ling Chun, however, didn't usually drink soft drinks, plus 1 D rank. All in all, it was a pretty rewarding haul. Then, Yunye swaggered forward and went up to the second floor with Ling Chun and Songwon. "Yunye, is there anything I can help with?" Songwon asked him. Sure, it felt great getting carried through the stage, but it still made Songwon feel useless. Even though there was also someone standing nearby who was only watching and not fighting, she still couldn't compare herself to Ling Chun. Ling Chun was a freak even the word genius couldn't describe. Seeing that Songwon really didn't have anything to do, and that while it wasn't tiring, it was definitely boring. Yunyi thought for a moment and told the Wolf Lord to kill a little more slowly. Then he took 3 bottles of iced drinks out of his spatial pack and handed them to Songwon and Ling Chun. Ling Chun normally didn't drink soft drinks, but after thinking it over, he still accepted one. Songwon, on the other hand, took hers right away and started drinking. Seeing that everyone had been properly taken care of, Yunyi nodded in satisfaction. After all, that was the annoying part about being a summoner. His summons were too strong. There was no need for Yunyi, the summoner, to fight or even give orders. So, to keep from getting too bored, Yunyi basically always carried snacks on him, along with all kinds of leisure gear tables, chairs, stools, and the like. Aside from storing loot, his spatial pack was filled with all sorts of things for eating, drinking, and entertaining himself. And of course, his bag space was nowhere near running out. After all, Yunyi had spent several million just expanding its storage. If other people ever found out that he'd upgraded his bag space just for fun, they'd probably be furious. In fact, if the cave lighting hadn't been so poor, Yunyi might have even pulled out a lounge chair and laid back. There really wasn't anything for him to do, but very soon, the Wolf Lord cleared the second floor as well. And, naturally, it gained a few more talents. But, compared to the 6 talents from the first floor, some of the talents on the second floor were repeats, so there were fewer this time. Still, the quality of the talents was pretty high. Both of them were Your Summon, Wolf Lord, has acquired the talent Insight B rank. Your Summon, Wolf Lord, has acquired the talent Thickhide B rank. Yi nodded in satisfaction. Then, they headed to the third floor. But unlike the first 2 floors, the monsters on the third floor seemed to include elite-type monsters. For example, there was a giant wolf, several times larger than the other wolf monsters, or special wolves whose fur was a pale blue all over, making them look clearly related to elemental power. Yunyi turned to look at Ling Chun. After thinking for a moment, Ling Chun said, "The first 2 floors of Wolf's Lair are the easiest part. But this third floor is the hardest section of the whole dungeon. Not only are there all kinds of elite monsters, some of them even coordinate with ranged attacks. Quite a few awakened have fallen here." Yunyi nodded in sudden realization. No wonder he'd felt that the first 2 floors, while the monsters looked pretty strong and their stats were decent enough, didn't actually seem all that special. So why couldn't other awakened clear them? Turns out, all the real difficulty was hidden on the third floor. So, once we clear this floor, we'll get to see the dungeon boss. Ling Chun nodded. Yunyi glanced at the Wolf Lord. At that moment, the Wolf Lord was standing there, looking utterly bored, waiting for Yunyi's orders. Ling Chun looked at the Wolf Lord and thought for a moment, then added, "The difficulty of the third floor is on a completely different level from the first 2 floors. You'd better not send your summon in recklessly. After all, you barely know what skills they have." Yunyi looked at Ling Chun. He'd thought Ling Chun was the cold, silent type who ignored everyone. He hadn't expected him to start talking this much so soon after meeting. "Thanks for the warning, but I want to let him try." Hearing that Ling Chun didn't say anything else, He could offer Yunyi a friendly reminder, but whether Yunyi listened or not was no longer his concern. Then he watched as Yunyi ordered his summon to charge straight toward that pack of wolves. Just as Ling Chun thought the Wolf Lord would be focus-fired by the whole pack, he was stunned to find that the monsters didn't move at all. Or rather, they wanted to move, but in front of Yunyi's summon, they simply couldn't. What kind of ability was that? Ling Chun stared in confusion at those monsters that didn't even dare move in front of Yunyi's summon. He had never heard of any talent or skill that could make mutant beasts not dare attack at all. Ling Chun had never seen anything like it. Even Ling Chun himself could only make monsters fear him. It wasn't to the point where they couldn't even move. But Yunyi looked completely calm, as if he'd expected it all along. Wolf gods, might. It really lived up to its name. They didn't even dare move in front of the Wolf Lord. So this was what absolute bloodline suppression looked like. The Wolf Lord didn't waste any more time either. With a few lunging swipes, it began slaughtering the wolf pack, showing not the slightest mercy. Then, system notifications started ringing in Yunyi's ears. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has killed an LV-13 Elite Berserk Giant Wolf. Gaining 297 EXP and a 15-point bonus for killing above its level. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has killed an LV-15 Elite Frost Wolf. Gaining 425 EXP and a 27-point bonus for killing above its level. And those two special monsters were naturally taken down by the Wolf Lord with ease as well. After all, they couldn't move. And those two special monsters also rewarded Yunyi with 2 talents. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has acquired the talent Gigantification Baranki. Your summon, Wolf Lord, has acquired the talent Frozen Power, Aranke. Looking at this one, Aranke and 2 Baranke, high-tier talents. Yunyi nodded in satisfaction. Sure enough, you really do have to kill stronger monsters. The talents they drop are practically all Barank or better. Songwon and Ling Chun, meanwhile, stared blankly, unable to believe what they were seeing as they watched Yunyi's Wolf Lord so easily wipe out that whole group of monsters that clearly looked troublesome. Songwon only had one thought. Yunyi was just way too strong. She needed to stick close to Jimin, other words, cling to a powerhouse. Everything Yunyi did only made that thought stronger. But Yunyi's actions dealt Ling Chun an unimaginable blow, as if his whole worldview was about to collapse. Of course, after thinking it over, he reminded himself that he was already a monster too. At most, Yunyi was just one level more monstrous than he was, so he stopped dwelling on it. Still, his confidence in dueling Yunyi's summon had clearly changed. He wasn't nearly as certain as before. Even so, he still trusted his own strength. After all, the new talent he'd obtained had given him plenty of confidence. Alright, it's cleaned up. Let's go. Yunyi looked at the two of them and said with a smile. Songwon nodded. Ling Chun, on the other hand, looked like he had something to say. It was written all over his face. Because he really wanted to know what talent Yunyi's summon had, or what kind of skill that could make those monsters completely unable to move. To accomplish something like that, apart from a mage with spatial talents, he couldn't think of any other way. But among the awakened, things like talents and skills were a person's greatest secrets. So it was impossible to casually tell anyone that he really wanted to know, so he kept thinking about it. And with an expression that obvious Yunyi naturally noticed it too, and he also knew exactly what Ling Chun wanted to ask. But of course, Yunyi was never going to tell him. After all, that ability was simply too broken. He normally wouldn't display it in front of other people, and he definitely couldn't tell anyone about it either. Then the three of them continued forward. Along the way, they ran into several more groups of monsters. But since they were all wolves, the Wolf Lord wiped them all out with ease. It also gained 2 more A-rank talents Crushing Force and Elemental Mastery and 1 B-rank talent. As for the C and D-rank talents, there were 5 or 6 more. Looking at the Wolf Lord's talents now, aside from not having any S-rank ones, the number of talents it had was no worse than the Undead King and the Skeleton King, his other 2 epic summons. And the Wolf Lord's raw stats were far beyond theirs as well. If he really compared them, Yunyi honestly wanted to know whether the current Wolf Lord could beat the Skeleton King. Would it be evenly matched? Or a total stomp? But then again, that comparison wasn't exactly fair to the Skeleton King. After all, one of them had cost 500,000 evolution points, while the Skeleton King had only cost 300,000. Those extra 200,000 points were enough for Yunyi to evolve yet another epic summon. So it was only natural if the Skeleton King couldn't compare. Just as Yunyi was thinking that, before long, the group reached a staircase, Ling Chun immediately said, "Up there is the boss for this team dungeon. Most likely it'll be an elite grade monster. Of course, the result is different every time it refreshes. There's also a chance it could be an epic boss, though that probability is very low. Anyway, I didn't encounter one yesterday. The reason Ling Chun had come to the team dungeon yesterday to grind was first of all to complete his first advancement trial, but secondly, he wanted to try his luck and see if he could run into an epic boss, because he'd heard that someone had found one. So he'd hurried over. And then he ran into Yun Yi and the others. Later, when he found that the boss was only a let grade after tangling with it for a bit, he'd taken it down with ease. After all, his ability was basically a hard counter to bosses of any kind. There was no real difficulty involved. Of course, that was only true for low-level bosses, but even so, it was already impressive. At least, up to now, Ling Chun hadn't found any awakened of the same generation who could compare to him. Just as he was about to think that, he suddenly looked at Yun Yi. Alright, maybe there was one after all. Hearing Ling Chun's words, Yun Yi got excited. After all, he was finally about to encounter a real boss. Last time, back in that leveling zone, that elite giant bear he'd run into didn't really count as a true boss in the strictest sense. Though in that leveling area, it was definitely boss level. But the boss of a team dungeon was a real boss. The three of them slowly stepped inside. The light couldn't penetrate into the depths of the cave. Only the faint glow from the entrance barely illuminated the first few meters. As they walked deeper, the surroundings grew darker and darker until they were completely swallowed by darkness. The sound of water dripping from the walls echoed through the empty cave, accompanied by the occasional faint reverberation, sending chills down the spine. And Song-won stayed close behind Yun Yi, afraid that something might suddenly appear. The inside of the cave was tangled and complex. The winding passages were like a maze, with every turn hiding the unknown. Stone formations hung from the ceiling, oddly shaped, like the claws and fangs of some ancient creature. The ground was slippery, and droplets occasionally fell from the rocks above, making crisp sounds that broke the silence. Yun Yi looked around and couldn't help asking Ling Chun in confusion. Are you sure this is the 4th floor boss room, and not some other strange place we wandered into? Ling Chun's expression was strange as well, because he wasn't sure either whether this place was really where the 4th floor boss should be. Yesterday, all I saw was one long staircase, and then I climbed up. There was nothing like this maze-like terrain. Once the stairs ended, you were at the boss room. How could it possibly look like this now? Song-won clutched Yun Yi's wrist tightly and said nervously, so, did we end up somewhere else? Are we not even in the dungeon anymore? Ling Chun shook his head and said firmly, impossible. In a dungeon, you either go back the way you came, or defeat the boss, or get teleported out. There's no way you just end up in some random strange place. Unless… Ling Chun suddenly paused. He'd thought of one possibility, but that possibility was very slim. He wasn't sure if that was really what they'd run into. Hearing Ling Chun stop halfway through, Yun Yi quickly urged him, don't stop in the middle. You'll get hit for that, you know? Ling Chun thought for a moment, before finally saying, unless we've encountered a special boss. A special boss? Yun Yi asked in confusion. Ling Chun explained, it just means the original boss got replaced. The chance is small, but it's not impossible. I heard that someone in this dungeon once encountered an epic boss, even though the original boss was only a leak. Ling Chun didn't continue after that. Truthfully, he wasn't sure whether his guess was actually correct. But if they really had run into an epic boss, Ling Chun was definitely excited. The three of them kept walking. At the end of the cave was a huge lake, its surface calm as a mirror, reflecting faint light. The lake was deep, so deep, the bottom couldn't be seen as if it hid endless secrets and danger. Standing at the edge of the lake, Song-won felt an irresistible pull toward it. But at the same time, she knew that beneath that still surface there might be some unknown terror lurking. Not long after, Song-won fearfully ran over to Ling Chun's side. Yun Yi looked around and found that everything was pitch black. It looked like, aside from this lake, there was nothing else here. Do you think the boss might be in the lake? Ling Chun shook his head. A longsword slowly appeared in his hand. In a cold voice, he said, I'm going down to take a look. Are you coming with me? Just then, a thunderous roar suddenly exploded through the cave. Water sprayed violently in every direction, splashing all over the three of them. Then, a massive white figure leaped out of the water and appeared before them. All three turned their eyes toward that white figure. Then the enormous white beast let out a ferocious roar at the three of them. The sound reverberated through the entire cave and kept echoing without end. Song-won's first reaction was to run. She even tried to drag Yun Yi and Ling Chun away with her, but no matter how hard she pulled, the two of them wouldn't budge. Run? How are we supposed to beat a boss like this? Song-won urged anxiously, all the while still trying to drag them away. A trace of excitement appeared on Ling Chun's face. The sword in his hand trembled an instant. He hadn't expected to actually encounter an epic boss. If he had been alone, he would have rushed in already. But there were still two people beside him, so Ling Chun naturally couldn't just ignore them. So he tossed out a couple quick instructions, telling Yun Yi and Song-won to hide off to the side and watch. If he couldn't beat it, they were to run immediately. Then he charged forward with his sword. In just a few strides, he had already reached that huge white figure. Yunye didn't move. Instead, he carefully examined the enormous boss that had suddenly appeared. Its fur was white at the base, dotted with gray markings. Its eyes were a deep blue, adding an air of mystery. Its ears were perked upright, and its long tail looked especially fluffy. It could honestly be called beautiful. Of course, if it were compared to the Wolf Lord, it was still lacking a little. After all, between beauty and handsomeness, Yunye preferred the latter. Watching Ling Chun charge in, Yunye wasn't in any hurry to make a move. This boss clearly also had wolf blood in its body. And if that was the case, then, in front of the Wolf Lord, it should be just like all the wolves before, nothing more than meat on the chopping block. So Yunye decided to first watch how Ling Chun fought and learn his combat style. After all, know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated. Besides, Ling Chun had basically already seen all of the Wolf Lord's combat style, habits, and tendencies. Sure, everything had ended in instant kills, but he could still roughly judge the Wolf Lord's stats from it. Although, win or lose, Yunye would get that 100 million either way. He had even considered deliberately losing to Ling Chun, but he also wanted to test the Wolf Lord's full strength. So, getting a look at Ling Chun's fighting style wouldn't hurt. Then, as Ling Chun's sword struck the boss, a system notification rang out on Yunye's side. Your teammate, Ling Chun, has dealt 10,000 damage to the LV20 epic boss, by Lin Lin. The moment Sungwon saw that notification, her jaw dropped on the spot. 10,000 damage from a single attack? Even though she'd always known that Ling Chun was a freak among freaks? One hit dealing over 10,000 damage was beyond anything she could imagine. When she normally fought monsters, the most she could do with one attack was only 100 or 200 damage. That 10,000 plus damage was practically 100 times her own. Yunye, however, remained calm. Back when Ling Chun had slashed at the Wolf Lord, he'd taken 5% of its HP in one hit. So this 10,000 damage was probably also about 5% of this boss's HP, which meant this boss had 200,000 HP in total. And Yunye's first thought was actually that this boss's HP seemed a little low. It wasn't that he thought the boss wasn't strong. It was just that with only 200,000 HP, Yunye felt that if he summoned all 3 epic summons, he could focus fire and instantly kill this epic boss. After all, the stats were right there, though it looked like Ling Chun could probably do it too. But after that, the damage numbers in the system prompts were no longer 10,000, but 1,000 or 2,000 at a time. So there really was a... After thinking about it, Yunye felt that made sense. After all, if a talent or skill like Ling Chun's had no restrictions whatsoever, then basically no one could survive even 20 of his attacks. You could even say that his ability was practically made for killing bosses. And on top of that, the damage from Ling Chun's attacks kept rising. Every time Ling Chun struck that white boss, his damage increased. Even though it was only going up by a few dozen each time, Ling Chun's attack speed was anything but slow. He could deal damage almost 3 times a second. Watching the boss's HP drop from 100% to under 80% in less than a minute, even Yunye couldn't help but sigh. Ling Chun really was worthy of being the top freak among all those monsters. This was a level 20 epic boss, and yet it was getting humiliated like this. In less than a minute, he'd already beaten it up this badly. Ling Chun was seriously outrageous. Still, even though in Yunye's eyes, Ling Chun had easily taken 20% off the boss's HP, which was about 40,000 HP, the truth was that Ling Chun was already starting to run dry. He was even beginning to regret charging in so rashly. Ling Chun's Heavenslayer class really did have terrifying attack power. Its offense was so strong that even in human history, ranking it among the top 3 attack classes wouldn't be an exaggeration at all. But Ling Chun was still only level 10. And because he had put all his stat points into strength and agility, his mana was the thing that couldn't keep up. And this was the first time Ling Chun had ever run into that problem, because almost no monster had ever been able to survive a full combo from him. As long as Ling Chun made a move, there was almost no monster he couldn't kill. But what Ling Chun had forgotten was that the target he was attacking was a level 20 epic boss, whose stats, skills, and talents all completely overwhelmed a mere level 10 awakened like him. So Ling Chun was starting to panic. And because he had to stay focused at all times to dodge the boss's attacks, he didn't even have a chance to pull out a mana potion. That left Ling Chun feeling miserable and frustrated. Yunye, who was watching from the sidelines, also noticed that something was off with Ling Chun. Why did he stop attacking? Looking at the new silent system panel, Yunye had no idea what had gone wrong with Ling Chun. But Yunye had no intention of stepping in. After all, Ling Chun hadn't asked him for help, and Yunye wasn't the type to meddle. To put it simply, Yunye wasn't about to stick his nose into other people's business. What if he helped and Ling Chun ended up thinking he was stealing his kill? That would be awkward. Finally, at that moment, the system rang out again, but this time, it wasn't damage dealt by Ling Chun to the boss. Instead, it was a notification that Ling Chun had taken damage. Then Yun Yi saw Ling Chun fly over from the distance and crash heavily onto the ground. Your teammate, Ling Chun, has been reduced to 0 HP and entered a near-death state. Seeing Ling Chun get knocked into a near-death state from just one hit, Yun Yi shook his head. An outcome like this was perfectly normal. After all, Ling Chun's opponent was a level 1 epic team dungeon boss. Fighting an enemy that outclassed him in every way, Ling Chun was basically dancing on a tightrope. The slightest mistake would send him straight to his grave. So, Yun Yi wasn't surprised at all by the result. No matter how broken Ling Chun's class was, he was still only a level 10 awakened. Soloing an elite boss was one thing. Elite and epic were two completely different concepts. For example, Yun Ye's Skeleton King could instantly kill 10 elite skeleton generals. That was the gap between epic and elite, a difference as vast as heaven and earth. So Ling Chun could beat an elite boss, but there was no way he could beat this epic one. Songwon, hiding behind Yun Yi, looked at Ling Chun, who had already entered a near-death state, and went blank. Or rather, she was scared senseless. Because even Ling Chun, who was 100 times stronger than her, couldn't beat this boss. So naturally, she assumed Yun Yi couldn't beat it either. She tugged at Yun Yi's hand and said in a trembling voice, "Yun Yi, let's hurry and get him out of here." Well, that boss still hasn't noticed us. Yun Yi shook his head. Pointing at Ling Chun, he said with a smile, "You take him and leave first. After I deal with this, I'll leave too." Deal with what here? Someone froze for a moment, then finally realized what he meant. "You really going to fight this boss? Please don't. I don't want you to die. Why don't you come with me?" Yun Ye didn't keep arguing with Songwon. He shook off the hand she had grabbed him with, slung Ling Chun onto her back, and stuffed a healing potion into her hand. After that, he stopped paying attention to her. "Hurry up and go." Then he walked toward the boss. Seeing that Yun Yi wouldn't listen, Songwon still wanted to persuade him. After all, Yun Yi had taken her in and even stood up for her. But there was no helping it, there was no talking him out of it. In the end, Songwon could only tremble as she carried Ling Chun out of the cave. Only after Yun Ye saw that Songwon had really left did he finally relax. Now, he could deal with this epic boss properly. What Yun Yi was most curious about was what kind of good loot this boss would drop and how much EXP it would give him. Last time, that elite outdoor boss had dropped 2 treasure chests. Yun Yi never opened them in the end. He just sold them for money. After all, Yun Yi didn't really need things like equipment or skill scrolls. Besides, with the Wraith protecting him, he didn't really need equipment either. But the drops from an epic boss were completely different from those of an elite boss. Epic grad chests, all sorts of special relics and items, their effects were things ordinary gear couldn't compare with. And epic bosses were extremely rare to begin with, let alone a level 20 epic boss. The fact that Yun Yi had run into one this time was pure luck. And that White Wolf boss quietly stared at Yun Yi as if it might lunge at him at any moment. Even now, Yun Yi still hadn't summoned anything. It wasn't because he was being arrogant, but because he wanted to test whether the Wraith could withstand this boss's attack. After all, the Wraith usually didn't get much use. Yun Yi had made thorough preparations as well. He was already holding a large healing potion in his hand. But the real reason Yun Yi dared to do this was the Wraith's unique O-rank talent. Soulguardet could block one near-death state and leave him with 1% HP. In other words, no matter what kind of damage Yun Yi suffered, he wouldn't be directly thrown into a near-death state. Instead, it would keep him alive at the last second. Of course, Yun Yi had already tested it himself. That was why he dared to do this. There was no way Yun Yi would gamble with his own life. But after seeing Ling Chun get knocked into a near-death state from a single hit, Yun Ye suddenly remembered this talent, so he wanted to test it and see whether Soulguard could really save his life. Meanwhile, his summons were all ready to go. The moment Soulguard triggered, he could summon all 3 lackeys at any time and have them gang up on this epic boss. After all, when the summoner got hit, there was no way the summons as his underlings wouldn't avenge him. You have taken damage. You are about to enter a near-death state? Your summon Wraith has activated its A-rank talent Soulguard. Near-death state negated, your HP will remain at 1%. Yun Ye hurriedly dodged off to the side. Looking at how his HP had dropped to just 1%, he immediately chugged a healing potion. Sure enough, no matter what the attack was, it couldn't directly knock me into a near-death state. Looking at the result of this little experiment, Yun Yi nodded in satisfaction. That meant even if Yun Yi got ambushed, he wouldn't have to worry in the slightest about instantly entering a near-death state. And being left at someone else's mercy? Yun Yi smiled, then casually waved his hand. 3 portals instantly appeared in front of him. Then the Undead King and the Skeleton King appeared before him at the same time. The Wolf Lord followed right after, stepping out of the portal 1 step at a time. The epic boss that had been eyeing Yunye menacingly instantly shifted its gaze to Yunye's 3 epic summons, especially lingering on the Wolf Lord. Then, something happened that Yunye never expected. A cool female voice suddenly rang out in Yunye's ears. "Human, the wolf god clan, how did one of them become a summon of you humans?" Yunye froze for a moment, then finally reacted and looked toward that epic boss, the white spirit wolf. "You can talk." "That was came again?" "Human, I'm asking you, how did one of the wolf god clan become a summon of mere humans like you?" Yunye thought for a moment but didn't answer. Because this thing had been evolved using evolution points, which was basically just cheating. So Yunye knew nothing about the Wolf Lord's background at all. All he knew was that the Wolf Lord was very strong. Ignoring what the boss had said, Yunye decided to let his 3 epic summons take this boss down first. Since it could talk, he could always question it slowly after beating it. Yunye wasn't going to spare the boss just because it could speak. All summons fight at full power and delete this thing in one go. The moment Yunye gave the order, the Skeleton King activated its 2 Ease-rank talents, instantly growing enormous, while the ancient sword in its hand burst into flames. The Undead King, meanwhile, summoned the remainder of the Undead Legion, cast amplification effects, and charged toward the boss. At the same time, a magic circle lit up beneath the boss's feet. The Wolf Lord also activated every talent it had obtained, and after a low growl, it too charged straight at the epic boss, the White Spirit Wolf. Using its massive body, the Skeleton King traded blows head-on with the White Spirit Wolf, just like a frontline warrior. The Undead King, meanwhile, quietly laid debuffs on the boss from the rear. As for the Wolf Lord, it would dart in every so often and sink its fangs into the boss's vital spots, then turn and run. The coordination between the 3 summons was incredibly tight, 1 main tank, 1 ranged support, and 1 assassin. Meanwhile, Yunye idly watched the system prompts as the boss's HP plummeted. From 80% at the start, it dropped to 50% in under a minute. The firepower of 3 epic summons was truly terrifying. Your summon, Skeleton King, used Ancient Sword / on the LV20 epic boss, White Spirit Wolf, dealing 8020 damage. Your summon, Wolf Lord, used Rending Bite on the LV20 epic boss, White Spirit Wolf, dealing 2583 damage. For a total of 7740, seeing all those hits in the 7 to 8000 range, even Yunye hadn't expected his epic summons to be this savage. They were carving through the boss's HP at a ridiculous rate. But considering this was them going all out, Yunye felt it was only natural. However, just as the boss's HP dropped to 50%, its voice rang out again. "If not for the effect of Wolf God's might, human, your summons could never have dealt me such high damage." Only after hearing the boss say that did Yunye understand that Wolf God's might had been affecting this White Spirit Wolf boss all along. Because when Yunye saw the boss still acting normally after the Wolf Lord appeared, he'd assumed Wolf God's might wasn't doing anything. He hadn't expected the Wolf Lord's Wolf God's might to still be having an effect. Thinking about it, Yunye also felt that even without using skills, Ling Chun could only deal maybe 2 or 3,000 damage at most. And even though the Wolf Lord and Skeleton King were epic summons, their opponent was still an epic team dungeon boss that outleveled them by 10 levels. There was no way they should have been able to casually deal 7 or 8,000 damage. But while Yunye was still thinking about what the boss had said, a freezing aura powerful enough to freeze someone solid suddenly spread from the boss's direction. Clearly, the boss had entered its second phase. After all, it was an epic team dungeon boss. There was no way Yunye's 3 epic summons were going to steamroll it that easily. Even while inside the Wraith, Yunye could still feel that bone-piercing cold affecting his movements. His 2 summons were also afflicted with a freezing effect. As for the Undead King, because it really wasn't playing much of a role in this fight, Yunye had already sent it back. After all, against an epic boss, its attacks were basically just scratching an itch. The boss's HP was only dropping by 100 or 2 at a time, and Yunye honestly couldn't bear to watch, so he recalled the Undead King. After all, its strength lay in mob clearing and summoning an Undead Legion. The real damage dealers here were the Wolf Lord and the Skeleton King, but once the freezing effect hit, the Wolf Lord and the Skeleton King both had their agility cut in half. The Skeleton King was still a skeleton, after all, and it was stacked with defensive talents, so most of the effect didn't matter much to it. The Wolf Lord, however, was a different story. It was crippled almost instantly. Without enough speed, it could no longer attack the boss and immediately retreat like before. In fact, the moment it appeared in front of the boss, it got smacked flying with a single swipe. It was basically disabled. Still, thanks to its absurd base stats, it could at least withstand the damage. The cave itself was now coated in frost because of the boss's skill, with thick ice everywhere. Sure enough, you really can't underestimate an epic boss. Yunyi quietly watched the battle between the Skeleton King and the White Spirit Wolf, while also thinking to himself, since the White Spirit Wolf was part of the Wolf Clan, why wasn't it under the Wolf Lord's absolute suppression? Why could it still move? Could it be because both of them were epic? That was Yunye's guess. At that moment, once the Wolf Lord realized that close combat was no longer in its favor, it immediately changed tactics. One blazing fireball after another appeared around the Wolf Lord. Your summon, Wolf Lord, is using the A-rank talent Inferno power. Seeing that Yunyi was a little stunned, because he truly hadn't expected the Wolf Lord to know how to change its approach and use its talents to attack, the reason Yunyi reacted like that was because whenever he gave orders to the Skeleton King before,
一般都是详细的说清楚该干什么，不该干什么，然后才下达命令。当然，命令也不可能太难，毕竟召唤物只听召唤师的命令，太难云翳怕骷髅之王理解不了，毕竟没脑子。但狼之主的行为让云翳感觉有点不一样。云翳看了一眼没剩多少血的 BOSS， 最后决定还是不想那么多了，等把 BOSS 击杀再说。看着 BOSS 不剩10%的血量，云翳想着这只 BOSS 会爆什么样的东西。突然 BOSS 的声音再次响起：“人类放过我。”我可以成为你的奴仆，成为你的召唤物。云翳听了之后摇了摇头，都有狼之主了，就不需要其他坐骑了。再者说，云翳也没听说过有 BOSS 成为人类召唤物的办法。最终，随着骷髅之王的古剑最后一击，巨大的史诗级 BOSS 白灵狼就这样倒在了地上。紧接着，系统的提示声响起：你的召唤物骷髅之王击杀了 LV20史诗级 BOSS 白灵狼。获得经验值5万点、8000点越级击杀奖励，获得战利品白之星特殊史诗级宝箱1、精英级宝箱3，检测到首次击杀史诗级 BOSS， 获得成就称号史诗杀手，佩戴此称号可对史诗级怪物造成5%的伤害加成。检测到职业觉醒者击杀史诗级 BOSS， 已成功进入 BOSS 击杀榜，当前 BOSS 击杀数。云翳击杀一支团队副本史诗级 BOSS 白灵狼 LV20， 排名9871。恭喜职业觉醒者成功通过1转试炼，请查看自己获得的第一个天赋。2转试炼将在职业觉醒者等级50级时自动开启。不过，看着顿时出现的这一连串系统的提示，瞬间看得眼花缭乱。不过云翳还是没忘记最重要的事情。云翳那看自己积攒已久的经验值，没有丝毫犹豫，直接哐哐地往自己的等级及自己3个召唤物的等级上疯狂地升，咚咚咚咚咚咚。升级的光芒不断在云翳还有3个史诗级召唤物面前疯狂闪烁。许久之后，云翳看了一眼自己的属性面板，云翳史诗杀手，职业召唤师，召唤物 LV30 骷髅之王史诗级， LV30 亡灵之王史诗级， LV30 狼之主史诗级。